first walked through on purpose. Here we master mindset, raise oral intelligence, and rebuild legacy brick by brick. We honor who we were before the world tried to rename us. I'm Dr. Shon, dentist, alchemist, Niji, daughter of the land, and this is the Hood to Hooded show, where we transform, rise, and stay risen. Welcome to the tribe. OCO, what up, tribe? Come in, tap those hearts. What's up? What's up? Welcome back to the Hood to Hood podcast with your host, Dr. Chiefess Sunflower. OCO to my Niji. Yeah, sending love to the ancestors. You already know what time it is. Welcome to the tribe. This podcast, this show is about positivity, inspiration, and knowledge to keep you what? Motivated and growing. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Join the journey so you can get your daily dose of good energy. You feel me? Alright, so our topic today is pretty heavy. We're going back in time. We're talking about history. I became a fan of history, so we're going to dive right in. If you're coming into the building, make sure you are tapping those hard so that we can reach our goal of 1K. Lately, we've been hitting 20K, but we're going to see what we can do today. Okay? So let's do some housekeeping. Make sure you got your notebook if you want to take some notes. If it's mentally, because I discovered something crazy today. Crazy, y'all. We gonna get into it. I hope you brushed and flossed your teeth this morning. I can't see your name, but you just got the #1 gifter badge. The letters is messing me up. I think it might say scars. I can't really read it. So tell me your name. Thank you for tapping those hearts. Alright. Today, before we get into it, I am wearing the lip kit by Glam Light. This is Cinnamon Swirl. It comes with the lip kit and the lip gloss. I love the Glam Light products. It's nice, creamy, and smooth. Goes perfect with like brown tones. So yeah, that's all tagged in the TikTok shop. Just in case you want to ask, you brushed and flossed your teeth today. I also found this product in the TikTok shop before we get into it. It's the Sea Like Kiss Artifact. Cool and refreshing for a refreshing experience. Plant extracts, and it has probiotics and a freshing oral spray. So we finna dive into it because we want to keep everything nice and fresh. So this stuff really, it's kind of like you don't have to chew gum. You just spray this on and pop in. Have a blessed day, queen. You do you, and don't let anyone tell you shit. Okay, like what? Period. Clock that teeth. That's what I'm talking about. You have a wonderful day too, on purpose, right? So we're gonna dive into our topic for today. If you're coming into the building, listen, it's gonna get a little heavy. So this topic is not for people who need a babysitter. This topic is for people who are trying to elevate and really keep growing in the mindset. So you can see from the title, we're not gonna waste no more time. Let's dive into it. Thank you for the 165 hearts. I see y'all tapping it up. Make sure you grab your daily heart me if you watch it on TikTok. That's the orange heart right here at the top. Get those channel points. So I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling amazing. Feeling real royal-ish and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's gonna be a great day because we are continuing to wake up and fight for our purpose, find our purpose, and we doing it unapologetic. Do you feel me or not? You're tapping the heart, so you gotta feel me. Thank you for tapping the hearts. Right? So this topic is called manufactured majorities. Let's kill the music a little bit. Manufactured majorities. What do y'all think that mean? I mean, it says what it mean right in the name, but I'm gonna break it down for you. Break it down to the elements so you can really see why the power of categories keeps the needy, keep the indigenous, autochthonous, melanated, mound builders, Mississippians, indigenous people reclassified. You might not know you classified, maybe you do. This is a conversation for everybody. And see, yesterday I learned that debate is good. Sometimes you don't need to run from the debate. You need to listen and read and share, because that's how we grow. That's how I grew. I didn't close my ears. I wasn't like, oh no, I don't want to. No, I'm all about knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? So we're going to discuss how law, the census, and whiteness created we the people. I'm sorry, let's talk about it, because how can we grow? How can we grow, right? So the United States did not form a majority naturally. And it hit me this morning because I keep trying to figure out, in the world that we live in today, how are immigrants controlling land all over the world? 90% of the world is colonized. How did this happen? My research on Constantine from 313 already proved that he legalized Christianity in 313 CE, something that you have to look up on your own. And you understand why he did this, because he wanted to control the people. After that, one of the popes decided to make Christianity a state. So we have the United States. Listen, I'm going somewhere. Don't run away just yet. Don't run away just yet. Talk about control. Oh yeah, we're going to get into it. We got to talk about the control, because there's a high level of control and mind fuckery that been going on, and I really wanted to understand, like, how did this happen? You're a beautiful woman with a beautiful soul. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Your energy is also very beautiful. All right, so I wanted to understand this. They formed one legally. So the United States did not form a majority naturally. They formed it legally. Our future has to wake up. You can say that again. Our future has to wake up. It has to. It has no choice. Solid just got that number 2 gifter badge. We already hit our goal for the day, 1K. I know we could go to 20K today. We got to go up for the ancestors. Because that's what it's about, the knowledge. And we don't run from the knowledge. This is why it's hood to hooded. Transforming your mind. Using alchemy to get the best out of life. Okay? So again, the United States, I'm saying this for a reason, so listen to me. Thank you for the follow. I'm only 19 and I'm seeing the whole world falling into shambles. Oh my goodness. Listen. It's falling into shambles, but we're not going to panic. Don't panic. The knowledge is the power, and that's why it's falling, because the knowledge is the power. This world has been led and colonized by a lot of pseudo knowledge, a lot of evilness, evil intentions, not good shit. Okay? It hasn't been led by good things. Right? So the United States was not form a majority natural, how it is today. Whiteness is a majority, and I wanted to understand, how did that come to be, because that's how we losing control. It formed one legally by collapsing many European people into the category of white. while excluding, reclassifying, and dispossessing indigenous people. Follow me here. This was the foundation of a state, right? This is how you form a state. So when you get the United States of America, you got a whole bunch of people who were not naturally in control, but they formed control legally. And we're going to get into how this happened every step of the way. I'm going to explain it to you. What's up, Tea Time Beauty? Just got the number 3 gift their badge, right? United States of Israel. You already know. A lot of rewritten history too. Period. Everything's rewritten. I'm Navajo. Good to see you, Tea Time. Thank y'all for following and sharing the live on TikTok. It's going up on TikTok. Tea Time just got that heart me. Go ahead and grab your daily heart me for the day, guys. Right? So that's the foundation of the state. Why does this question matter? Because this is what we're going into this live with. That is our thesis. I'm going to repeat it back without interrupting what I'm saying. But the United States did not form a majority. Naturally, they formed it legally by collapsing many European people into one category on a land that wasn't theirs. By excluding the indigenous people, reclassifying them, and dispossessing them on their land. This is how they formed the states. I love starting my Fridays here. I love that you love starting your Friday here because you know it's all good vibes. Nothing but positive energy, nothing but knowledge, because we all trying to continue growing. So I couldn't figure out how there were so many European on Turtle Island. The birth rates don't explain it, because it's only been how many years? 500 years of intentional colonization. So the birth rates didn't explain it, and that's the big key. Because when you go to the poll and voting, it's like the majority is whiteness now, and it just seems like it's so much. Where are the indigenous melanated autochthonous people? They've been erased on paper, but we still here. A lot of us just sleep. We don't know who we are. And this live is going to go into deeper of why this question matters. I realized it was not one people, it's a coalition of people. Whiteness is not an ethnicity. It's not an ethnicity. It is a legal, political category created to unify foreigners to indigenous land. Because that's how you have all the presidents. They're all immigrants. They're not of this land. Their ancestors were immigrants. But you have them kicking other immigrants off because they think that they're a better immigrant than this immigrant. Make it make any kind of sense. Right? But I realized it's a coalition. They had to unify to steal land all over the world. And it didn't just happen here on Turtle Island. It didn't happen just to the mound builders. It didn't just happen to the Mississippians. It didn't just happen to the copper tone race. It didn't just happen to us. It happened all over. Africa colonized. Everything except Ethiopia. Turtle Island colonized. That's this whole land. South America, what they call it now, North America, Canada, colonized. 90% of the earth has been colonized by the Vatican. We got to call a spade a spade. No sugarcoating here. This is not a lie for the sugarcoaters. This is not a lie for the sugarcoaters. Thank you for following 60-ish. If a guy gets kicked out of 109 different bars, would you assume he's the problem or the bars? Right. Congrats, Tiff Rainey lit it up. Thank you, Tiff Rainey. Tiff Rainey just got that number 1 gift that badge. All right. Right. So the government, so let's go back in time because the timeline is always going to matter. Thank you, Tiff Rainey. I really appreciate you. You lighten it up. Right? So the timeline in 1787. So let's take it back a little bit because when we talk about history, we got to talk about the facts. If you don't want to understand the history, the timeline, then you won't understand the facts. And for me, history is everything. So we ain't gonna go too far back, because I done went as far back as 313 CE, and we talked about Constantine as. We talked about the popes, the bishops back then who had evil intentions. They wrote about it, they talked about it, they bragged about it, right? So 1787, take it back with me now. We got the 1900s, the 1800s, now we in the 1700s. 1787, take your mind there. Go back in time with me. We in 1787. This is when the U.S. Constitution was drafted. 1787. And I always have to position my mind to remember that things like the slave patrol were instituted way before the government. So the slave patrol was 1704, I think. They already had people capturing, kidnapping, democide, genocide, homicide, all of the sides. Look this stuff up. It's not something that I'm just making up. Go look it up. It will change your whole mindset when you see, oh, the slave patrol was 1700s. What were they doing? Right? So we go from that to the government in 1787. Years later, the U.S. Constitution is drafted. Then 1789, 2 years after that, George Washington, an enslaver, a terrible person who they put on money, who they hype up like he's some type of hero. What kind of hero is that? You'll find out that when people want to control you, the heroes are not really the definition of a hero. The hero actually be the definition of a pirate or a criminal, but they put hero. Everything is opposite, right? Everything is opposite. So George Washington, 1789, he's inaugurated as the first president. Okay? Following along. Then 1790, the Naturalization Act is passed. Now you might say, what the hell is the Naturalization Act, Dr. Shon? I'ma tell you, you already know. Stank Money Gaming just followed. I like that name. That is a funny name, Stank Money Gaming. Did I read that right? Oh, is it Stank Money Gaming? How'd you come up with that name? Stank Money Gaming. Every president has been a part of the Freemasons. How are you? Could everyone here share my homeless/home supplies GoFundMe, please? I need heaters. Hey, Nurse Me. I'm sending you positive vibes today. Sending you love wherever you are. Thank you for sharing. Where is your link? I graduated from high school 78. George was the father. I have a Walmart registry too. Okay. Right? So George Washington is inaugurated as the first president in 1789. The Naturalization Act is passed in 1799. These people are immigrants now. They over here. They came over here. Ellis Island. Oh yeah. And then they started making laws against indigenous people. That's why we were POWs. But if you are a POW, that means somebody is doing a war crime on you. But that's why they can't call us that. They had to call us enslaved, even if we was already here. And that's the biggest trick of it all. So the Naturalization Act. What did the Naturalization Act say? We're going to get into that in a second. But then 1790, they also conducted the first census. This is when the government went around interviewing the indigenous people, asking them who they was, how many people was in the household, basically doing research, trying to figure out how much people is here, where their land is, how they can steal it, what they can take. It was just research, but people didn't know there was no internet. So when we take ourselves back to the 1700s, you have to remember there is no internet, there is no communication in the sense of going live. When something happened to you, it was an isolated event, right? So this wasn't a coincidence. This was infrastructure being built. So what about the 1790 Naturalization Act? This was the engine This was the engine behind it, right? So the 1790 Naturalization Act, which is when George Washington became, like around the time he became the president, that was 1789. So a year later, he created the Naturalization Act because they realized, how am I going to be a president when I'm not a citizen? I'm not a citizen, but I'm not indigenous. How am I going to be in charge of the land when I'm not indigenous? So they had to create this act. And this is where things get a little tricky. Immigrants coming over to an indigenous land, enslaving people, harassing people, black codes, all of these codes, slave patrol, because they already had the slave patrol, because they was already doing the democide, the homicide, and the genocide before the government, because these presidents were involved with this system of catching people, taking their land, harassing them, torture, eating them. Oh yeah, they were involved with these acts. They were born into these type of energies, this evil demonic energy. They were born into it. So George Washington, he was no different. He was born into it as well. That's why when he was the president, the reason why he was the president is because he had already had enslaved people. He was already down with the mockery, with the fuckery. He was already down. Can't you see it? The first president. And then after that, 12 to 13 of them were still involved with enslaving people. One of them had 600. And he was the president. They put him on the money. I think that was Thomas Jefferson. The founding fathers, they tell you. The heroes, they tell you. Why they laugh in your face, teaching the kids that these are the heroes. What kind of hero is that? It ain't no hero of mine. You not finna embarrass my ancestors like that. You better stop playing with us. The history is talking. The ancestors are talking. Right? So the 1790 Naturalization Act said that citizenship was limited. Now this is immigrants talking now. They're saying, hey, we already got the slave patrol. We already got the system going. We making these people work for free. You can catch them. You can say that even if they look at you wrong, you can do whatever you want because they're not a Christian prince. And the Pope told us that, hey, if they're not Christian princes, then we can seize the land. This is coming from way back in 313 CE from Constantine, from the Pope, from the Vatican, to the Doctrine of Discovery, to the Papal Bulls. So they coming with the Christopher Columbus energy. So that's what they was on in the 1700s. Even George Washington, you thought he was so different? You thought they was so different just because they called themselves the president of evil. The president of evil and torture. So when they said the 1790 Naturalization Act, I repeat it because I want you to remember it. It's a part of the missing link to unlocking who we are. This act said that citizenship here under their government was limited to who? Free white persons of good character. It said good character. This is a quote from the Naturalization Act. It was limited to free white persons of good character. So in their eyes, good character meant I'm enslaving people because they can't think for themselves, and I got an oath from the Pope to do whatever I'm doing, and I got, in God we trust. They knew that they could do these things. They put it on the money, the enslavers, and if you flip it on the back and say, in God we trust, you gotta pay attention, right? So if you weren't a free white person of good character, if you weren't down with enslaving the indigenous people, then you weren't a citizen in their eyes. So that meant the indigenous, melanated, autochthonous Indians, American Indians, the true ones, not the pretendians. There is a difference. I'm not talking about Native Americans. I'm talking about American Indians, the people they erased, reclassified. Before we get to that part with Walter Plecker, this is George Washington. He had a lot to do with this. They were intentionally trying to erase the people. So this Naturalization Act excluded indigenous people. It excluded the people they had on their plantation enslaved against their will. You could just be out because they had it. Any kind of rule, you could look at somebody wrong and they could just do whatever they want in their eyes. All people don't think like that. free people who were not classified as white were excluded. You had to be basically a free white person of good character, meaning a free white Christian. Right? Because the indigenous people weren't Christians. They turned foreigners into the people when they realized, hey, we got to form some type of government in order to change the laws over here, because technically we immigrants. How we over here doing all this with no type of paperwork, no type of nothing? I see y'all lighting the chat up. Let's see what's going on in the chat. I have a post, but can you DM me for the link? Adnan, along with Thomas Jefferson, facts, he was the worst of them all. And Benjamin Franklin hated us. They even took out so much from the Bible. Yes, Jefferson. Jizzle in this bizzle. Hi, Dr. Shon. Jizzle in this bizzle. Tell me what happened around the 1600s. Facts. Yep. 1600s, they were at war. Fighting. Trying to get into the interior. Stealing land, taking land. Using insane methods, eating people, like that type of stuff. It was just outrageous. Imagine if some animals attacked you. It was like gone wild. Yeah, they took Enoch out of the Bible. They made it into a slave Bible when they came over here. Franklin said he will not rest until all of us are wiped out. Oh my God. No, he didn't. He didn't know what the juices were trying to do. Apple juices? Truth. Just stop in and show some love. What's up, couple of locks? The fan club. Couple of locks. Thank you for joining that fan club. Y'all lighting it up. Right? We telling nothing but truth, and sometimes the truth might hurt, but hey, we don't really give a flying. Right? So they said if you were not a free white person of color, meaning all the presidents, so we can't really exclude these presidents who people hype up. This political system, you'll see why it's not built for us. It was never going to make us win. And we're going to get into why it hit me this morning. It's so deep, I promise I'm going to get to it. Right? So whiteness was not a culture. It was a citizenship filter. They turned foreigners into the people. All still ran by the same people. Let me go like on YT. Let me go like on YT. All ran by the same people. We love it here. We love it here, period. Right? Why was this necessary to create states? This is important. To convert stolen land into states, guess what the government had to do? So when they were over here, they already had the police was originally the slave patrol, so they already had the slave patrol. Decades, well, we would say about 80 years before the government, right? So they already had that in place. They said, dang, we got to have some kind of system to make what we're doing even legal. So they realized it was necessary to create a state. They got that from Constantine. When Constantine back in 313 wanted to control the people, he had to create a state, and their state category was Christianity. I will watch from here for more engagement. Okay. Thank you, Tea Time Beauty. Watching on YouTube. Yeah, we multi-streaming on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, all of that. We got to wake up the masses. So to convert the stolen land into states, the government needed a recognized citizen body. They needed people to say that they was a government to be citizens. They needed voters. They needed landholders, so they had to steal the land to become landholders and start voting. They needed a population legally defined as the people. And remember, the people had to be free persons of good character. Even if they was enslaving people, doing all the evil stuff you see, they were still considering themselves free persons of character. You have to remember, these people who went to war, the Andrew Jacksons, the Thomas Jeffersons, they were Christians. They went to church. They actually had enslaved people under the church. The Vatican is what gave them this right to feel this way. In the name of their Lord. Was what they said. People like Christopher Columbus. That's the part people want to exclude, but that is the missing link. Indigenous nations already had land. We already had land. We already had governance. We already had territory. We was already lit. We wasn't working like we do now, like chattel slavery. We wasn't paying rent, paying this, paying that. You got your stuff passed down. It wasn't how it is now. There was plenty of land for everybody. It was so much land. People had hundreds and hundreds of acres. There's just too much land, right? But they did not fit the new legal framework that was instituted by George Washington and these immigrants. So instead of recognizing indigenous sovereignty, the state only recognized white citizenship. Immigrants now telling, hey, only the white immigrants are citizens. This is the government that we are in today. It started with just being, hey, you had to be a white Christian prince or a white citizen immigrant now. How confusing and twisted is that? They treated the indigenous nations, the melanated autochthonous copper-tone Niji, the Mary Indians, like foreigners, wards, like they became our guardian. Check out Sarah Rector. I don't know if y'all seen Sarah Rector yet, but it showed you how they even became guardian. Like if right now, if the things were the same as back then, the government would be the guardian, which they still are kind of your child and of you. You couldn't make no decisions for your child. Sarah Rector, she couldn't even control her land. She had to have a white man, and a lot of times the white men sold the land from the child, stolen land. It's so easy. They would just write it down, steal it, and they would even take the kid out if they had to. It showed this in the movie. The movie was so real, man. I gotta watch it again. If you haven't seen it, it just ties all of this together so you can see in reality from a theatrical perspective of what was happening back. This was a later, but you can imagine before then it was just straight chaos, straight just madness, things that won't get written down. Everything wasn't written down, but a lot of it was, thankfully. But they were writing it down and saying, hey, you can't read, because they would never expect us to go back in these times to be able to research at such historical rates as we do now. That's why it's crumbling apart. It makes me sad this organized religion still impacts our families and this history is not acknowledged. Yes, this organized religion still impacts our family. That was their biggest weapon. Since Constantine, he knew that this would be the biggest weapon. If you read Christopher Columbus' journal, he said, what? These people gonna be easy to convert. They're docile. He was giving them Bibles because they didn't know. Even if you watch the old episodes of The Simpsons, you'll see it went from Indians in one episode, Indians in one episode. They built this church, and now the Indians, the indigenous people, no longer in the sunlight. They no longer have a tribe. Everything is about your church members, your church family. Everything is about your work family, your work friends. It's not about your tribe. You don't even know who your tribe is no more. All you do know is your co-workers. Right? That's not by accident. That's not by accident. So instead of recognizing us as indigenous and sovereign, able to govern ourselves, they say, no, we govern you because we own you. At this time, when the government, the U.S. Constitution was being formed, in their mindset, they were the owners of anybody who wasn't a white, free person of good character, aka an immigrant who did not have melanin. Let's just be honest. This is in the government, right? Y'all want us to learn about it so bad. But you want us to learn the lies. As long as we speak the lies, learn the lies, then it's okay. As soon as you start reading the truth and uncovering the truth, then it's like, wait, no, not there. In the Kevin Hart voice. It's like, no. Out of here, man. It's crazy. So whiteness, again, was not a culture. It was a citizenship filter. Why was it necessary, again, to do this? So George Washington, let's talk about him and how colonial land becomes state land. Colonial land becomes state land. This is the whole mindset behind colonization, white supremacy. When you pull up on the coast in a boat or a steam engine or whatever, you go to war with the people, you take over the coast, then you go and you try to fight your way to the interior. Now this area is colonized, so you're going to bring more people to this area. Now y'all fighting for this stolen area, and it just spreads out. That's like colonies. That's how colonies grow. You start small and then it just grows outrageous because it's intentional growth. They're trying to overtake and steal, right? So George Washington, let's talk about him. George Washington was an enslaver. Who was George Washington? The first president of the United States. The United States, right? He owned enslaved people. He managed plantations. So he was all down. All of them were down with this whole system of coming over here, enslaving the people, switching their identity, saying that they brought them here, tricking them and telling them that they're not indigenous, taking the chiefs out, getting the kids, brainwashing them, making them go to church by law. Legally, you had to go to church and work. Labor, you could not do no labor. This is where they get the word lazy from, because they took away the legacy and replaced it with lazy. You took away the legacy and replaced it with lazy because people don't want to labor all their lives for nothing. And that's why the system crumbling now. You took away the legacy. George Washington, he was the ruling class forming the government. George Washington, an enslaver who enslaved people. So the people designing citizenship benefit from enslavement. They benefit from seizing the land. They benefit from racial hierarchy. So the same people defining freedom were actively denying it. This is something called spitting in your face. I never had someone spitting. This is when somebody spit in your face because they know you ain't gonna do nothing. Oh, I don't care. This is the energy they giving. I don't care if I'm saying that we free and you're not. We free. This is the type of energy. This is why you get the same type of energy now. So the 1790 Census Bureau, not Bureau, but the 1796 Census came out. He was the president 1789. He created the census and what was true and documented in this time period. The first census occurred in 1790. It counted free white males, free white females, other free persons, and it put everyone else as enslaved, even though a lot of these people were listed as Indian. That's why you can't really find those Census Bureau. Even if you go to do your ancestry, you can't find it on ancestry.com. You have to go actually to Lenexa. I think that's Kansas City. I might be kind of off with that, but you have to go there to get your genealogy. That's why y'all hiding the paperwork. Indigenous people living, anywhere were excluded. If you weren't white, you basically wiped out in their government. So the Census Bureau as an agency was created in 1902. So this was way before that. Now, why did reclassification became the issue? Over the 19th century, racial categories shifted. In some regions, the indigenous people lost their Indian recognition, and they were reclassified as colored and Negro. Okay, the American Indians were reclassified as colored and Negro, and then from colored and Negro to African American. If you read a book called Despotisms in America, this really breaks down to the molecule how enslaving people was an experiment. Tricking them out of their identity, saying that they were from somewhere else was an experiment. It was the trick of war. The result of war is POWs. It's always the result of war. And what was happening over here? War. We were the POWs. Okay? So, when land, taxation, and treaty obligations were at stake, they had to reclassify us. This is documented in court cases, state records, National Archive materials. The census categories were not neutral. They changed. And they often change those after stripping us of our indigenous rights, our land, our recognition. To say, no, you're none of what you said. Just like they put themselves in the categories, as we're finna see in a second, they put us all into one big bucket, Negro. They didn't care about what tribe you was from. You was a Seminole, you was a Choctaw, you was a Cree. They didn't care. The Navajo, they didn't care. You was an Appalachian, they didn't care. You was a Muskogean, they didn't care. They said you was a Negro. Just like they said, hey, if you a white free immigrant, you're white. But if you're anything else, you're Negro. We don't care about none of the tribes. There was hundreds of tribes. They didn't care. They erased them all and said, hey, we only gonna recognize these 5. So that way it could tie to our lie, and we're gonna give them a little land so it could tie to our lie. And if you wanna be recognized, you're gonna move to this land that we tell you, because this is our land now. And none of the melanated people was down with that. The indigenous tribes was not down with that. That's why the Seminoles, it's funny that I'm a Seminole. Actually, I went to the school, and I'm a Florida State University alumni, which is the home of the Seminoles, but didn't realize that the Seminoles was me. But they whitewashed it. And that is the biggest trick. That is the biggest generational curse, is whitewashing history. It messes up the kids. I was messed up. I began to think that my melanin was something bad. It's not something good. I didn't know it protect me from the sun and cancer and all of these things. I was taught that, whiteness was better. This is what they try to put out, the propaganda. Why? Because without it, there is no power. So many in specific regions over time were changed. Their indigenous status was changed. And now we are waking up. So what happened to the indigenous people? Let's get into that part. Izzy Banks just sent those roses. Thank you, Izzy Banks. Let's check the comments before I continue. You are absolutely ethereal. Thank you. I'm 75% Navajo and 25% Apache. Wow. Greetings, Empress. What's up, Izzy Banks? OCO family. Oh, I didn't mean to send that. Don't accept that. I didn't mean to send that. I hit the wrong button. I'm just trying to stroll here. No. I didn't mean to send it. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. My grandmother was Chickasaw, generals from World War II. Did we fight on the wrong side of the war? All documented. Facts. Love this. Teach these young people. Period. Pop. Y'all lighten it up. We at 7K. But this is where it gets juicy, guys. If you tapping in, make sure you tapping those hearts. Make sure you're sharing. Make sure you reposting. Make sure you getting your daily heart me. Because this is where it gets interesting. I had to explain all that to get to this point. Sometimes you gotta let it simmer in the crock pot so you can actually understand the details. It makes sense to go back from the 1790s with George Washington, because you got to understand what was happening back then and how it correlates to what is happening now. So what happened to the indigenous people? Because they were here. They wanted you to think Christopher Columbus discovered something. Christopher Columbus said in his own journal, hey, I see so many beautiful people here. I don't know what the fruit is. I don't know what the name is. I just know I'm going to control them. That's the whole thing he knew. He started taking people without their permission as soon as he pulled up, putting crosses in the ground, handing out Bibles, saying, oh, these people's soul gonna be easy to take. He only wanted to break the soul, break the spirit. When I read that did something to me. I said, I know this man didn't just say he wanted to break our soul, take our spirit. Come on now. While Europeans were unified under the category of white. So if you came over here, you were unified under the category of white, meaning you were a free white immigrant. You were given citizenship under the United States, which is now colonized by these people who believe in enslavement, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all these different people, right? James Madison. It's 12 or 13 of them. Look it up. I did a live on it. Go to my YouTube, you'll find it. But they were given citizenship. They were given land access, because without the land, you cannot own nothing. So they had to steal the land and say, hey, this is my land. We're citizens. We voted. They gave themselves voting rights. And indigenous people such as us, such as our people, who were already here were excluded from citizenship all the way up until the 1924, or really 1865. They abolished enslaving people, and they said you were a citizen and you could vote, but really you really couldn't vote. You were removed from the land, tribes broken up. Then they came out with blood quantum for the Native Americans, which actually isn't about blood at all, so that they can be in our spot to make the story sound right, because you have to have some kind of indigenous people. They just didn't want it to be us. It's too many of us. They reclassified us and treated us as foreigners here on our own land. How psychotic is that? But that is always the result of a war. POWs. Okay? So one group was consolidated, the other one was dismantled. They consolidated all themselves into one big group. This is how the white became the majority. The Europeans stayed separate. If they stayed separate, meaning the English didn't equal Germany, didn't equal the Italians, doesn't equal the Polish. If each one of these groups stayed separate, they would be the minority, competing settlers. They would be competing with each other. They realized that by merging together, they could create a government, a numerical block. This is more power, a voting block, a land holding block, a psychological identity. It's just a psychological identity. This is how foreign settlers became we the people. They got together, right? We the people was intentionally undefined. It was flexible. They could expand. It meant, okay, we recognize citizens, but we're not recognizing everybody. We're not recognizing indigenous nations. No, we're not talking about you. If you indigenous, actually, and you're not a Christian, then the Pope already said, I can seize your land. I can capture you. This is from the Pope. Go look it up. The Doctrine of Discovery, the Papal Bull, PAPALBULL. Look it up for yourself. Doctrine of Discovery, eminent domain. Look these things up, and you can open your eyes. We the people, it wasn't for everyone. They didn't just conquer with numbers first. They conquered with categories. This is why it is important. This is why it is super duper important. They conquered with categories. So what was this coalition? Right? White is not an ethnicity. It's not a culture. It's not a nation. It is a coalition. Inside of that coalition, this is where it gets deep. When I was in elementary school, I always thought that the intimate domain was strange. He's my spirit animal. Oh, Pop, your spirit animal. Yes. I shared it. I sent it to individuals. I'm going to follow you on YouTube later. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, YouTube is where all the replays and the heat is. Because I've only been in a reality check for a year and a half. Really oh my goodness. This is crazy. It's insane. So inside of that coalition, who's inside of this coalition of the majority? When you see the majority here, white supremacy, this is what it means. There are 20 distinct European origin people included in the category white. So when you trying to battle and it say, hey, let's get together, we all gonna be white now. In order to come over here, you gotta reclassify yourself as white. You can't enter the United States through Ellis Island as a Welsh or a Dutch. That don't exist in the category here. You gotta be under white. So that way you can vote against these indigenous people, steal their land. We're gonna overtake them, guys. That 20 distinct European origins included these people. It's a lot of people. So when you think that the indigenous people was just attacked by white people, or no. It was the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, the Irish, the Dutch, the German, the French, the Scandinavian, which included the Norwegian, the Swedish, the Danish, the Finnish, the Italians, the Greek, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Polish, the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Czech, the Hungarian, the Balkan people and Jewish Europeans. All of these people placed under white. Do you see now? They placed under one identity so that they could come over here and get all the benefits of being a white immigrant identity. They are the people. They can vote. They can steal the land. Because why? They're one of these identities, right? These are separate people. They have different languages. They have different histories. They were at one point rivalries of each other, but when they came over here and they were against the melanated autochthonous Niji, they say, oh no, they too powerful. We're going to have to team up and create a government. We're going to have to team up. That's the only way we can take them out. That's the only way we control them, is we come together, guys. Right? They didn't arrive here as one people. They became one people after they arrived. These groups were classified honestly, and none of them, if they were classified individually, none of them would be a majority. And I thought about that this morning. I'm like, if white was broken down into where the people really came from, then they wouldn't be the majority. Because I was trying to read like about Ellis Island and seeing where the immigrants came from and how many white people were here at a certain point in time. And that before Christopher Columbus, there were none. And now they're the majority. The birth rates didn't explain that. Right? Imagine if the Census Bureau, the law, the politics required accuracy. If you were English, you had to say you were English. If you were German, you had to put German. If you were Italian, you had to put that. Polish, what would happen then? These white majority would be broken down into a minority. They would be competing. No dominance. Okay? So that's why this matters. That's how the state was formed, and that's how we continue to be controlled. That's how this whole politics, you think it really, I mean, honestly, guys, do you really think it's going to make a difference? I mean, it can make a difference to be a part of the politics, but wouldn't it make more sense to try to fight for our sovereignty and to get our land back and not have somebody over you versus thinking that you voting your way out of this situation? It's not going to happen. This situation was built on you always being the lesser. You always being the laborer. You always being the person at the bottom of the totem pole. It don't matter. Right? It's not built on you being at the top ever because you voted. No. So in 1492, and this is where I'm going to sum it up, but in 1492, before 1492, indigenous populations in the Americas was tens of millions. Right? Europeans was zero. This is 1492. Zero. By the 1600s, somebody asked me about the 1600s. The 1600s, there were a few thousand Europeans. And they were mostly on the coast because they were invading, squatting, building colonies at this time. Just a few thousand. Then you jump to the 1700s, there were about 250,000 Europeans here. Still the minority. When did this change? The 1800s, they really started to immigrate on the steamboats. There's pictures of them coming on the steamboats. No pictures of us coming on the boats, by the way, but pictures of all the Europeans coming on the boats, ready to reclassify our ass, ready to tell us we was from somewhere else so they can steal our land and say that they was from here, knowing damn well that ain't true. The indigenous populations drastically reduced because it was paper genocide. Now, when we say paper genocide, one thing we have to understand is what is the definition of genocide? Because I said genocide, democide, homicide is what the government was committing and they made it legal, right? Genocide is a destruction of a people through targeted violence. So paper genocide is actually erasing people, telling them that they can't identify themselves and that you have the right to identify them simply because they were not a white Christian. How delusional are you? So 1850s, the massive European immigration accelerates in the 1850s. This is where it started to go crazy. So the immigrants were all of these 20 nations. They all coming in under the white category. They're not coming in under individual categories. It took a whole 20 nations, the United Nations, to overtake us. Right? The Irish, the German, they really spiked in the 1850s. By the time it got to the 1900s, this was peak immigration era. The European descendants was about 60 million. The Europeans and their descendants, it got up to 60 million immigrants. How? Ellis Island from 1892 to 1924 brought in 12 million immigrants. 12 million immigrants. Because they said, hey, we want you to come over here. And they were giving these immigrants through the Homestead Act, through other illegal actions, they were giving them 160 free acres of our land. Nearly, I think it was 10% of the United States was given away as free to these immigrants. If they promised to work on the land for a certain amount of time, it was given to them for free, right? It was taking it from our people, like Sarah Richter, and giving it to these immigrants for free. Because without the land, they don't have a state, they don't have control, they can't control the people, the indigenous people. Right? That's why they'll start you with history with George Washington and tell you he was the founding father and a great person. They want you to start there, but you got to go back. You got to go back and do the timeline. It puts everything into perspective. Today, the white category is 60% of the United States population. And notice I said category. All of those 20 nations together create 60% of the U.S. population. So when you hear them talking on the news about the majority, it's really 20 nations divided. They are the United Nations who now classify as white. That's why they say white supremacy is really evil. You know, the percentage represents 20 plus foreign origin people counted as one. 60% of the United States is immigrants. And they have the majority right to vote, control the land. They done got it to 60%. It don't really matter because they have to vote. In order to be over here on this land, they have to vote. So when you see them voting, they have to do this. As a sovereign person, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to vote for shit. You didn't have to beg nobody for nothing. It was yours. Passed down. Indigenous. Sacred. They destroyed something that was sacred. You think the ancestors gonna rest on that? Would they still be the majority if they counted the honest way? If you said, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Germany. Where are you from? I'm from Russia. But if you erase all that and just put them as white, we can control the indigenous people, steal their land, and make millions, if not billions. Ellis Island was not mythology. Like I said, 12 million people came through Ellis Island. The other ones came through other colonized ports in Boston, Philadelphia, Charleston, New Orleans, the Gulf ports, Angel Island, which was in the West Coast. That was where most of the Asian people came through. Angel Island. I don't have time to go into Angel Island today, but that's where it came from, right? So that's why I said we the people, this is how the majority is controlling us. What happens here? What happens here? Majorities can be manufactured, as we can see. Citizenship can be engineered, as you can see. Land can be converted illegally by law. It's crazy how I put that all in one sentence. Land can be converted illegally by law. Only in America can land be converted illegally by law. By people who were enslavers, who called themselves the fathers of humanity and freedom. Justice for all. Fuck out of here, man. Wake up. The identity can be rewritten on paper. So once you see that, you can't unsee it. And that's the whole moral of the story. Once you see that, it's just something that you will never, ever forget. But one thing they can't erase is the knowledge, the sovereignty. They can't erase the true history. Once you connect the dots, how can you go back to sleep? A lot of us are asleep. I was talking to the chief about this. A lot of us are asleep in a prison with no bars, no guards. The doors ain't even closed. Nobody in the prison but you sleep. Because Christianity and white supremacy got you in a chokehold. You're scared to go and look up who you are. You're scared to go read about history. You're scared to go realize who George Washington truly is. You're scared. You want to keep him in a good light. You want to keep them in a good light. And this is where we mess up at. We really have to talk about these things. Debating, talking about it, getting it out, knowing the truth. Sometimes it hurts, but it's better than sitting here living a lie. I can tell you that much. It's going to do so much better for your mental health when you realize, dang, my ancestors was the truth. They fought. They taught. They created. Everything we use right now created by our ancestors. They were creators, inventors. Imagine if they had not been tainted with, where would we be right now? How wealthy would the indigenous populations be right now without colonization? And that's the last thing we're going to think about. But what happens when these categories collapse? Who decides identity then? You know, is unity more powerful than numbers? And what does real sovereignty look like? That is what I want to leave us with today. What does real sovereignty look like? Ask yourself that. All right. Oh, yes. Truth. Yes, so true. Nothing but truth coming through. Thank you for following. It's more. Yes, y'all showed out. We had 12.4K hearts. Y'all really showed out today on the Hoods Hooded podcast. It has been very informative. I know I went over a lot, but basically the moral of the story is the majority didn't become the majority through fairness, through equality. All these words they try to use, this is just propaganda to make you stay a part of the system so that you feel like you can vote your way out of it. This is the power of categories. That's why they wanted to put us in the category of African American. It didn't matter if your people from here, they want you to think you from Africa, even if you don't even know where you from. It's better to do your research on yourself so you can know and tie yourself to this land. You might be in the National Archives like my ancestors, and my family don't even know. I'm probably one of the first people to wake up, but I don't give a fuck because I won't go back to sleep. I'm not going back into the prison and laying here looking stupid because everybody else just laying here looking crazy. Don't know who they are. Don't know who their great-great-great-grandparents is because you won't go and put your name in a freaking box and click the button and connect the dots. Because why? We too busy going to work. We too busy going to church. We too busy doing everything else except learning who we are, knowing history, and appreciating our ancestors for who they really were. We rather put them in these categories that we've been trained to put them in and just bow down and act like it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. I'm done. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for the 13K hearts. Make sure you go ahead and grab your daily heart me. I'm about to get up off of here in just a second. If y'all don't have any type of questions, last minute comments, let me know. Let me know. If not, this has been our show. I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode of the Hood to Hooded podcast, where we don't do nothing but grow. We tell the truth and we tell it how it is. I know it ruffled feathers, but we just got to tell it how it is. This opens up the debate. This opens up your mind for clarity, for intention, so you can really be tied to your purpose and realize how important it is for you to hold your head up high. How important it is for you to never allow people to break your spirit. The whole purpose of these categories is to break your spirit, trick you out of your spot so that you won't pursue greatness. You'll feel like, dang, something's wrong with me. No, something's wrong with the system. And it's a system that was built way before now. It's not going to break in the day, but the only thing that can break today is your mindset. You can walk out of that invisible prison today where you just locked down and thinking that you just know. Open your eyes. Go do some research on who you are. I promise you it's going to be way more valuable than you going and clocking in every day, feeling less than, being pessimistic, worrying about what the government doing. You already know they ain't got nothing good going on, so if they start to crumble, who gives a damn? You still gonna be okay. We still got the ground. We still got an ocean full of fish. We still got trees. You still got seas. You still got creativity. You still got a lot going for yourself. That is the importance of sovereignty. Realizing that you are going to be okay regardless. Spiritually, you are protected by our Creator, right? Spiritually, you are protected in all that you do. If you lose something, so what? Be like, hey, that wasn't meant for me. Something better coming. Anything I lose today, tomorrow, I know it's making room for something new, something better to enter my life. You can't keep holding on to the past. You got all this old, outdated knowledge. You haven't learned nothing since high school about history, but you're trying to act like 20 years later this matter? No. You got to go read. That's why to be a leader, you have to be a reader. So if you come into a leader with some BS, you trying to tell me something, but you ain't read, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Unless you come in with something truthful that we could talk about and really go, oh, well, I didn't know that. Let's talk about some reality, some real shit, right? So today, remember, these categories, don't let it break you down. The category for us is sovereign, and we want it back. This is Dr. Shon. I'm out. I'll see y'all tomorrow. We on day like 75. Me going live every day. It's been one of the hardest journeys of my life. I got like 290 more days to go live. So make sure you are following. We going up. I'm getting better going live every single day. I'm meeting more people every single day. Sometimes I don't want to hit that button, but when I show up here and y'all tap those hearts all the way to 13.5, we have engaging conversations. I learn so much. I read the comments. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. So I appreciate y'all for standing in the paint and just being a part of the tribe. I really appreciate that. Tea Time Beauty says sovereign, period. Sovereign, period. I'm out, guys. Have a lovely day. Adios.